ready? Come on, you lot. Go on in. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The imps are here to stay.
Morning all. I've gone for the shorter intro today. The other one tends to go on a little bit, and whilst it gives people an opportunity to join in, it also gives my dog an extra minute to wander around wanting to go home. So we're out here this morning. We're walking with the pooch. It's raining. It's not very nice at all. It's windy, but inside my heart is aglow. So coming off the back really of the Sheff Wednesday game, and this could be a quick dog walk if I'm honest. But coming off the back of the Sheff Wednesday game, I think there was quite a lot of positivity from Lincoln fans. I think it was a good solid point in a game that other teams might have lost, almost certainly. I don't think there's any denying who controlled possession, but that's something when we're playing these bigger teams, that's something we look to do. We look to let other teams control possession, and we stay very robust and organised in front of them, and they struggle to break us down, and Bolton struggled to break us down. We gifted them 2 goals, almost certainly. You know, in actual fact, the last goals that we conceded that were purely of the opposition's making rather than partly of our own making was Bristol Rovers when we won 6-3, and that seems like a long while ago now. And you think back against Charlton, clean sheet; Ipswich, clean sheet; Bolton, the 2 goals I've mentioned; Newcastle, clean sheet. There was the couple actually against Doncaster, wasn't there, to be fair? So I'm thinking really about the league first and foremost. And then this weekend we conceded a goal that, you know, had we not made that mistake, almost certainly I think that would probably have been another clean sheet. That's not for want of trying, and I do want to touch a little bit on Sheffield Wednesday first and foremost. We'll talk a lot about Lincoln over the next couple of days. We'll talk about the Barnsley game, whatever happens there. There's been plenty said about Sheffield Wednesday. Ben and Jake are on the podcast this week. They'll talk about Sheffield Wednesday as well in terms of how we did. When big clubs come to Lincoln, I'm either let down or they hit expectation. There's very few big clubs, and when I talk about big clubs, I really mean former Premier League teams, of which there are 6 or 7 in this division at least. But when one of those teams comes here, you think they're going to be good, and then either they hit that or they don't. There's no teams you think are going to be good, and then they've come here and absolutely blown us away. I can't think of it. I mean, Sunderland beat us 4-0 here, and they didn't blow us away. So it's hard for that team to exceed expectations. So where did I see Sheffield Wednesday on that? Well, actually, do you know what? I think they're a good side, and it's proven they're third in the table, and their fans are not happy at having drawn with Lincoln City. I think if actually they look at how we've been playing recently against bigger teams, how tight we've been, the shots on target ratio, which is really interesting. I actually think we stand these teams up, we make them figure out a way to beat us, and then we stop that. Now, it's not a great spectator sport at times. The first half wasn't a brilliant watch, but actually take the goal out of it, and there wasn't an awful lot of threat. Their best threat came after our goal, when we had a little bit of something to defend. But I didn't think there was a huge amount of threat in the first half. They did have chances, but there was no clinical edge. And is it really a coincidence now? Teams keep saying, "Oh, we just weren't clinical enough." That's Sheffield Wednesday. That's Ipswich, that's Charlton, it's Portsmouth back when we went to their place, it's Oxford. It's an awful lot of teams that have not been clinical enough against Lincoln City, and it's either extremely bad luck or we've got a little bit of something to do with that, doesn't it? Aren't they? Kate, I'm just going to answer that. Being a former Premier League team doesn't mean they have big expectations. In this division, I think there are very few, and you'll probably name one, but there are very few former Premier League teams that don't have big expectations right now. And you say arrogant fans are arrogant regardless of their history, 100%. And I think that you heard that around the ground when TJ didn't play a ball in. A lot of our fans booed. Arrogant. It is. Anyway, I think Wednesday fans actually should be, it's going to sound really bad, should be happy with the draw. And I think a lot that are not are looking at it being Lincoln City. Lincoln City, we haven't played them since the 70s, or fans who are in their 30s, who the hell are Lincoln City kind of thing. They weren't that non-league team that did really well in the FA Cup. Well, yes, but we're now doing, I think, what we need to stay in League One. And I think it's an interesting shift for us, because when we first came up, I remember chatting to Danny off the record, and he said, We knew when we came up this season we weren't going to be one of the best teams in the division. This is back in 2019-20. He said, so we wanted to sign players that would get fans on the edge of their seats. So even if we lost games, the likes of Jack Payne and George Grant would be doing something creative, would be playing nice football, which would keep fans engaged. So Danny's focus was very much about making sure we got off our seat, making sure we had something to cheer. Michael Appleton sat in between that, and some people say he never really decided which of those it was. We weren't particularly tight, and we didn't particularly thrill at times last season. The season before, we were very tight and we did thrill. So, it's kind of, we had all and then nothing. Mark Kennedy, I think, is first and foremost, let's not get beat. Let's not get beaten. And I think when you look at October, and I think Bolton was October. So when you look at Bolton, you look at Charlton, you look at Ipswich, you look at Sheffield Wednesday, they were games that I thought, wow, if we get 3 points from those, we'll be doing all right. Well, we've got 5. We've got Barnsley coming up this weekend. Now, 5 from 4 doesn't seem that fantastic. When you think about the aspirations, Sheffield Wednesday in 3rd, Ipswich in 2nd, Charlton, to be fair, were poor, and that's an example of what could happen if we continue to play 3 at the back against the likes of Accrington and teams like that. You could see more games like Charlton and fans will get frustrated. But when you look at teams like Bolton as well, who, okay, been a little bit up and down, I'll throw Derby into that a few weeks ago. We've got some good results against these bigger teams through being compact, through not wanting to get beat, through having committed players who will fight for the cause. And it's been tough to watch at times. The first half was tough at times. That's why TJ got booed. But it just annoys me booing one of your own players for playing a ball back when it could have gone in. There's this anger around me at times. Some people are sitting around me because they feel almost entitled for this fast-flowing attacking football that we've never really played. It's an absolute fallacy. People talk about John Schofield's first season, 2006-07. 6 months, 5 months maybe, where we were really good. Interspersed, by the way, when you look at some of the results that we got, they weren't all great. You talk about that fantastic week month against Barnet, and we beat Swindon and we beat Rochdale 7-1. There was a 0-0 in there. So rewriting history is not really always fair. And Danny, we talk about Danny's teams in the National League. I remember him getting criticism for draws away from home. For going to Oldham, Kate mentioned Oldham, for going there and them having a man sent off and there's only drawing 1-1. And it's really easy to whitewash history. We talk about the year we made the playoff final in League One, but actually the second part of that season wasn't all that great. We didn't play a lot of great football. We talk about Brandon Johnson being a phenomenal player for us and Morgan Rogers being a phenomenal player for us. But when we were 2-0 down against Blackpool with 70 minutes gone, or losing to Rochdale, or drawing with Fleetwood, or all those games, easy to forget. We're unbeaten at home. All right, we've drawn 5 games, but we are unbeaten at home. It's a sad fact that actually of the teams that we've played at home, probably we feel that we should have beaten 3 of them and not. We should have 6 points more. And nobody would expect this Lincoln City side to have been on the fringes of the playoffs, but actually we've probably done enough in games to do that. And for Sheffield Wednesday fans to be upset, I think, about drawing with Lincoln, the run that we've had, I haven't checked the stats today, but I think in terms of points per game for the teams that we've played, we've now had the toughest opening 13 or 14 games, however many it is, of all the teams in this division. And it ain't going to get all that easier. Barnsley are above us again. We always seem to be playing teams above us. And then it's, Port Vale, Accrington will be a decent little run, chipping them in the FA Cup aside. But then it's Plymouth. But, the next, get Barnsley out of the way, the 4 games, Port Vale, Accrington, Plymouth and Morecambe. You look at that and think, well, we could feasibly take 7 from that. Draw at Port Vale. You'd expect to draw away games, win your home games, would be in a decent position. And actually then Ipswich fans and Sheffield Wednesday fans might look at this and think, do you know what, Lincoln actually aren't a bad side, are they? They've lost 4 in 18. No, I was thinking 4 games in 18. At the beginning of the season, I remember standing at the back of the stand in the fan zone, and people were saying, where would you want to be after 10 games? If someone said, well, I'll tell you what, after 18 games, you've lost 4. One of those will be in the Football League trophy against Doncaster. I'd take that all day long. Would have gone home right there and then and said, I'll come back in 18 games on one. Do you know what I mean? You would have taken that. So I think, Sheffield Wednesday fans, I think, should look at the point. It's a missed opportunity to a degree. because they did have some good opportunities, the best of which I think was probably the Bannon one, which Paddy O'Connor cleared off the line. So they had their opportunities, and they're not a bad side at all. And I said at the top of this dog walk about Sheffield Wednesday, about big clubs who come to Lincoln, and they either achieve expectation in my eyes or are lower than that. Sheffield Wednesday haven't ever disappointed me in that kind of respect. And when I say disappointed, I don't mean me sat there going, "Oh, I expected that team to be better," because I fucking love it when a big club comes to us and they're shit. It's brilliant. Charlton, my God, awful team. Last season they were an awful team. Season before that they were a poor team. They've always underwhelmed. Sheffield Wednesday haven't. At their place last season, they had an excellent first half and we came back into it. We beat them 3-1 last season, and that was all about keeping Barry Bannon quiet. Luis Fiorini, had an excellent game. But Wednesday didn't disappoint me. You could see that they had useful players in key positions. They probably just didn't have the steel. This season, they've got a little bit more. Just like the clinical edge. And when you've got Lee Gregory playing up top with Michael Smith, lacking the clinical edge is something that they won't suffer from over a 46-game season. You might miss it in one game, you might miss it in 2 games, but you won't go like we did last season all the way through autumn. Kind of back and forth here, but thinking where the goal's coming from. Where the goals are going to come from Sheffield Wednesday, all over the place. Barry Bannon is an orchestrator, he's a conductor. One boy will go back. And we didn't keep him quiet. And I saw a comment, I think it was from Stuart Bray on Facebook, where he said, you've got to mark him man for man and keep him quiet. And I can see where he's coming from. Like Sanders, everywhere Barry Bannon goes, you go. But then, of course, you've only got one in midfield. And to underestimate the other players that Sheffield Wednesday have would have been a fallacy. So I think we stuck to a rigid shape, let Bannon have the ball and thought, we'll pick up whatever crosses, whatever balls, whatever he deals with. We'll deal with those when they come in rather than dealing straight with him. And whilst he did open us up with some great balls, especially like the 30, 40 yard diags, the result after that often wasn't what you'd kind of hope and expect. So I think that we did really well dealing with the post-Barry Bannon moves rather than trying to cut it off at source. The thing is, if you cut it off at source and you get it wrong, you committed a body, you then may have an overload elsewhere on the field. And I think I can see why we did it the way we did it. I can see the argument for both. I can. But I don't think Wednesday fans should be particularly unhappy. Of the teams we've seen this season at Sincilbank, okay, it's not a who's who of the best teams in the division, is it? Exeter, Forest Green, Fleetwood, Charlton and Derby, and now Sheffield Wednesday. Wednesday were the best. They're the best team. In possession, they were very, very good. They always had willing runners. There was plenty of movement. They looked to try and break the lines well. We just defended well. And they had their 17 shots, just like Ipswich had their 184 last week. But shots on target was the same for both, 3. And that's telling, because in one game, it's wastefulness. In 2 games, it could be a coincidence. Charlton had 1 shot on target against us. We've conceded 4 shots on target in our last 2 home games in the league. And going back, Fleetwood were a little better, but I think we're much more savvy since that run of Fleetwood, Forest Green and Exeter City. I really do. So I don't think Sheffield Wednesday fans should be disheartened. If they're not in the end of season playoff shake-up, I'll be absolutely gobsmacked. I really will. And I wouldn't look forward. I wouldn't go to Hillsborough thinking that's somewhere we can win. We'll go there, 3 at the back, keep it compact, and we'll do the same thing. And you know what? Most of the time we'll get a result against these big clubs. If we do it right. The only one we didn't do it right against was Peterborough. And look what happened there. We got absolutely pounded. We learned lessons at Peterborough. And even Cambridge, we kind of went there and we lacked the attacking edge, but we shouldn't have lost that. 2 goals in a minute, poor defensively. We're not being carved open by anyone really since Bristol Rovers, Peterborough. I don't think we were carved open at Cambridge. I don't think we've looked that susceptible since the opening few games at home. In fact, Fleetwood and Exeter were probably the worst defensive performances we put in. So you can see real progress, and it's going to be a long journey. Mark Kennedy hasn't come in and we're going to be topping the table in 6 months. But the way things are going, with the mentality that we have, if we can continue to develop the attacking side of our game, which is really important, probably another striker. I'm going to stand by that. Ben House, I thought, did a lot of good running, played a lot of nice football. In those last 20 minutes, you just wanted to bring a lump on that you can go whack, chest that, hold that up. You know, like a Matt Reed style player. I don't mean Matt Reed, and I'm going to bring Reedy back, but a Matt Reed type player. Or, you know, a physical specimen like John Akindi, where you lump it and go, right, chase that, harass that. Even Tom late on would have been just something to relieve a little bit of pressure. And it wasn't the Alamo late on, was it? I think probably from about 75 minutes onwards, I thought we're going to hit something from this. I didn't feel like against Fleetwood. I felt Fleetwood would equalise. I felt Forest Green would equalise. I never thought Charlton were going to get a winner. I never thought Ipswich. Really, I didn't. They looked like they would score, but from 75 minutes, I thought we can get at least a point here, but we're on course for a win. I didn't feel that susceptibility that I felt a season or two ago. And do you know what? A lot of big clubs, a lot of fans will now say Lincoln are one of the worst teams we've seen because they didn't show a lot of attacking intent. A lot of people have probably said that about Accrington over the last few years, but they've been at this level longer than we have. Held their own admirably at this level. Very rarely in a relegation battle. And that's what we're aspiring to be. We're not aspiring to be Accrington. We're aspiring to just be that mid-table team, because that's the platform. That's the next platform. And Danny and Nicky wouldn't talk about consolidation. That wasn't a word they always wanted to be moving forward. Probably where the split came, to be honest, because I think from a realistic point of view, consolidation was what we needed. And I think Michael was all about that. We surprised ourselves in the COVID season. We did. Yeah, and that's kind of almost, it was a brilliant experience, but it's also been a millstone, hasn't it, around our neck? Because then the following season, actually, given our budget, we did underperform a little bit, but to be safe with 2 or 3 games to go, you'd have probably taken that at the beginning of the campaign, had we not been in the playoff final the year before, had all of the pundits not been going, Lincoln City will finish 6th or whatever, and a lot of fans did as well. I think I put us 10th. We underperformed on that. But this season, a lot of people had us in and around the bottom 4. And at the moment, all being well, we look to be navigating that. We've had a tough start. Apart from the 3 home games that we should have won. But actually, you look at it, Fleetwood aren't in the bottom 3. Exeter aren't in the bottom 3. I think there's only Forest Green and Bristol Rovers aren't even there now. I think there's only Forest Green that we've played in the bottom 6, maybe. I might be wrong. It hasn't been an easy start. It hasn't. I think we should be pleased with what's happening. Still in all the cups. We're going to go into Halloween. Still in all the competitions. We could be out of 2 of them already. With a good chance, a good opportunity to progress. With the greatest respect to Chippenham. But you don't take anything for granted. Decent place to be. Bristol City, free hit. Go there. A bit of feel-good factor. Imagine getting a result. It's possible if we shut up shop, if we do what we've done recently, look to hit them on the break. Yeah. So there we go. So Sheffield Wednesday fans, I keep thinking of that meme, that do not. That's what happens when you get rain on your screen, by the way. So very quickly, I keep thinking about that meme, that do not be upset meme, and I hate it. I hate memes. I hate all that football Twitter. It annoys me. But I think about that. Sheffield Wednesday fans, don't be upset. Bloody hell. I think my mate Chris messaged me this morning and said they've taken 30 points for 15 games, something like that. Take 2 points from every single game. I guarantee you next season you'll be playing Nottingham Forest. It's that simple. And I think that from their point of view, Charlie, I think from their point of view, a draw is a decent result. I do. I think a lot of their fans might have even taken it before the game started. Come here, boy. Sorry, 1 second. So, a decent point, a decent result for them. They might not think it, but in the grand scheme of things, towards the end of the season, that isn't going to be a point dropped against a bottom four side, in my opinion. You know, we've done enough post Cambridge to prove to me that Lincoln City are a decent side. So we'll say all this, hopefully, go and get something, anything at Barnsley, anything at all at Barnsley. And it's been a good October, a month that looked absolutely horrific. So quick one, Mr. Dawson, Owen Dawson, talking to platforms to move forward, things to go to plan, just so a genuine target in 5 years being promotion. I think long term, the genuine target has to be promotion. Now, whether that's 5 years or not, I don't know. Much depends on getting 2 or 3 players who come in who you can sell for 700,000-800,000, and then the recruitment kind of, come on, we're picking up more young players like young Sean Rowan and Max Sanders. You've got if players like that coming in, they've got to get in and around the team. Danny Mandrew, we've got to get players like that in and around the team. It's why the likes of Matty Virtue as well, you know, coming in on loan, probably not wanted by his parent club, maybe. They're the sorts of players you bring in, you've got to try and turn a profit. If we start turning a profit from players on the field, the Peterborough model, there's no reason why we can't be similar to Peterborough. And look, Nate is invested there, Darren McAntony. We're not going to have that level of investment, but there's plenty of teams who have played seasons in the Championship in recent years. You know, Yeovil, Gillingham, Colchester have all played Championship football. So that's probably the aim. Right, I'm going to go, people, because it is absolutely hammering it down now, and I am at home. But I will speak to you all again very, very soon. Up the imps.